Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the Fill an Email PDF without send keys. In this training, I'm going to show you a brand new and unique way of automatically filling out, emailing, and downloading filled out PDFs all with the click of a button. It's going to be an amazing training. I can't wait. Let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. We have done something like this before where we've filled out PDFs automatically using data in Excel, but this way is going to be totally different and much better. It's going to require just a few lines of code. We're going to automatically fill out PDFs in the background so Excel can do anything else while it's happening. And it's going to be done all on a click of a button, so you can basically create hundreds of filled out PDF forms, email them, download them through Dropbox on just one click. And it's not going to involve very much VBA, probably around 20 lines of code. We're going to write them along with you. It's going to be fantastic. I really want to get that to you because it's one of the best ways to fill out PDFs. We always want to be able to fill out fillable PDFs with the data in Excel, but it's always been a chore. Today, that ends. When I show you this, it's going to be an incredible way. You won't want to go back. You won't want to use send keys. Send keys is a method where we automate the keystrokes in Excel. It's something we've done before. But as new methods, as new technology, new websites, and new ideas come, I bring them to you. So there's always better ways to do things. So when that happens, when I find those, I'm going to bring them to you. And that means sometimes not necessarily duplicating, but improving the training. So you'll see various methods that I do and adapt, and as I adapt them, as the technology gets better or I discover new ways, I bring them right to you as soon as I discover them. I hope you appreciate that. In this training, we're going to go over every step, but we're not going to go over the form. This is a form. Basically, what we're going to be doing here is just creating templates, and we can create unlimited PDF templates with this. It's a really great little form. This particular form, basically, users will insert some information and save them to table below. I'm not going to go over that because there's a lot to go over already, and I've gone over how to create, save, and update these sheet-based forms throughout. If you want to learn how to create this, just go ahead and search my channel for form. I've got several training where we start from scratch on something like this. But in this case, I really want to focus on the effort where to fill out PDF forms and how we're going to do that. So that's where the focus is going to be, not on this form creation. But basically, when we make a change up here and we change anything, it's going to change down in the table below automatically. When we add a template, it's going to be able to save a template. When we select on a template, it's going to load it. It's relatively simple, something we've been over before. Like I said, I've got videos that are dedicated to just this. If you like these trainings, all I ask, just three things. One is subscribe to our channel. Make sure you click on the notification icon bell. I create these free trainings with free downloads. Just use the links in the description below each and every Tuesday. So I'd appreciate it if you can subscribe and click that notification icon bell. The next thing would be to comment below. I love to see your comments. I respond to each and every comment every single day. That's the first part of my morning. So I want to make sure I get your feedback, good or bad, happy or sad. I want to hear from you. And the last thing is just a thumbs up. That helps the YouTube algorithm, or if you're watching this on YouTube, thumbs up, or on Facebook or wherever social media you're watching this, that helps us. I create these applications for free, but if you want to support us, a great way to do that will be to pick up my 150 application zip file. That's 150 applications for you for just $56 right now. That's 37 cents per template, and I've got all my best templates, and it includes a library, of course. So you can single click to open the workbook, single click to open the video that's corresponding to the training. So it's a great application. Tons and tons of people are picking that up, and I'd appreciate that. All right, let's get to the training. Here's what I want to do today. Basically, what I want to do is I want to have a fillable PDF, and I've got let's say patient or customer data, or whatever data. I want to put this information in a fillable PDF. What do I mean by fillable? Let's just pull up one of the PDFs. I've got some information here. I've got some PDFs here for you. Let's just say this PDF, let's open up this PDF right here. And I've got this PDF. It's just a little form. I've got a few of them. Now I want to take the information, last name, first name, and I want to automatically enter it, all this data or selected data into it. I want to put that in. I've got two different PDF forms that we're going to work with. I've got a patient intake form, and I want to put the last name information, first name, age, address, city. I want to put all that information in. And what I want to do is I want to send that directly to the patient before that they arrive at the appointment so that they can fill out the rest of this. This is a common practice. You can use this, of course, in any type of application. So basically, you want to pre-fill out a form, and I want to email that, and I want to do that to unlimited. So basically, the steps are what we're going to do is we're going to determine who we're going to sending it to. Who are we sending it to? We're going to send it to all the types of patients, just new patients. We're going to select a specific form to send them, select a form. I'm going to create a webhook ID, and I'm going to show you that what is. That's specific. I want to create an email subject, a dynamic email, so that their first name would go in here or their last name or whatever. I want to send the email. I want to attach a PDF that's already been pre-filled out with their information. So the information that they're going to get would already have their name, first name, age, address, city, state, home, social security, and all that information already in. It's going to be pulled from this particular. I want to do that without using send keys. I want to send all that information. I want to email that directly to them using my Gmail. So that's what I want to do. We've used Outlook so much in the past. I'm going to show you how to do that using Gmail this time, which is very popular. I want to do all that in the background. I want to do it on a click. So if I select 100 different patients, automatically they're going to get 100. And I want to do more than that. And I want to download that filled out PDF. I want to put that in my Dropbox. So inside this particular folder, filled out PDF, I want all those PDFs in here filled out with their name and the date. So that's a high task. We're going to do all that, and we can do all that with about 20 lines of code with some help with some amazing third-party applications. So let's get to it. I'll stop talking about it and I'll start doing it. So let's write some code first. That code is going to help us send information. We're going to be using some third-party tools. In fact, we're going to be using a few of them. What are those? Just to review, we're going to be using Alito, and I'm going to include all these links inside the application, so make sure you download. I'm going to include a list of links right here in the application. We're going to be using all these. We're going to be using Alito. Fillable, this one we're not using, but this is going to help you create. PDF Escape will help you create. If you have a static PDF form with no form fields, this will help you create it automatically and for free. It's called PDF Escape. I've gone over that in one other video. That we're not going over today because I already have fillable PDFs. But if you don't, you can use this site to go. Well, I'm going to use PDF Alito that's going to help us automatically fill those PDFs. I'm going to use an automation called Integromat, something that we introduced last week. We're going to create, in other words, that's going to help us send it to Dropbox, send it to email, and fill it out. And then we're going to use Google Console. That's going to help us authorize Google, and it's going to help us authorize Integromat to use our Google. And then we're going to go some training that's going to help you connect that to Google. So we've got a lot to cover here, but it's just a little bit of code. So we're going to get to that. So just to give you a recap, we're going to start with Alito. We're going to upload our documents here in this. We're going to use Integromat. This is going to help us take the information from Excel, bring it into that, fill out the forms, send it to Dropbox, and send it to Google. And then we're going to connect our Google. We're going to use this API, Google APIs. I'm going to walk you through step by step on how to do that. So we've got a lot to cover. So the first thing what I want to do is I'm going to upload some documents here. And this is Alito. You can sign up. It's a free account. It allows you up to 3 documents. So it's a really, really cool tool, cool website. So I don't have any documents. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload a document. Just select here to create a new document. And they have static pages, dynamic pages, and we're going to upload a PDF, but you can create your own in here as well. So I'll just choose a file, and we're going to choose let's go ahead and put in patient intake form. That's the one I want. Okay, so I'll just call this patient intake form. I've had it here already. And then what we want to do is we want to click finalize. That's going to flatten the PDF. What that means is going to be no longer fillable, in some instances, or we can uncheck that to make it fillable. So either way is fine. Let's just click create, and we're going to create that. That's going to create a document. So once it's filled in, but if you want your people to continue to fill in a form, of course, then you want to keep that not flat. So there's 2 ways to do that, which is really great. So now we've got some form fields, and what you want to do is go through step by step all the fields in which you want to fill it out. So for example, if we click on last name, I'm going to create one without spaces. I'm going to create last name and save that. And then I'm going to do the same thing with first name. I'm going to quickly go through these, and any fields that you want to click, just make sure that there's no spaces in here. You can use underscore if you do want to use spaces. And I'm going to call this address. And then I'm not going to do all these fields. It would take too much time, but go through the few of them so you can see how to do that. And then we'll do is map them. So I'm going to create a state, and you want to make sure these are the same. It doesn't have to be the same names as your data, but it should be very similar so that you can understand it, right? Keep them consistent. Also, try to avoid using things like the pound sign. Try to use avoid using like colons in certain cells. So this one would be called city. And so there's some characters that are kind of, oh, we got that email. This is email. So let's go back to email. And then let's take a look at, well, let's go with just home number. Home. So what you want to do is avoid things like this, home number. You don't want to use that. So we'll use home number. Special characters could be an issue, especially when using them links. So we'll keep that in mind. And we'll call this cell. And then we'll call this ID number. It's fine. And that's enough for us. That's enough. That's all the cells we need. That's good. We got it, most of them covered. So basically, oh, we can do date of birth too, DOB, okay? Because we've got that information. Okay, so when you want to see a list of all those, let's go click the input fields here. Once we have it, we can just double check to make sure everything looks good. That's all the input fields. We don't need the labels. That's good enough. So also keep in mind settings. We have settings here. File name, you could do English, and then again, you can change the finalize or flatten the form document. Either one is here is fine. This basically turns all of them into a static, but if you want to have users continue to fill out the form, you would unclick this. Document security, if there's any document security here, you can update that. You can add a document password. And then there's an API that we're going to work with here. API, this is going to help us. API, you can actually connect directly with Alito. You don't need Integromat, but for our purposes, I want to send it to Dropbox, I want to email it, I want to do a few things with it. So we're not going to use this API, but it could be used in the future. Okay, so our next step is to start programming. What we want to do is, now that we have our main document and it's all set up here with our form fields, let's go back into Excel and start writing some code. In fact, let's go into this. If you don't have the developers open, you can use Alt F11 to get into the Visual Basic. Clicking there. If you don't have the developers, of course, you can get to that using the options, and then just click on the customize ribbon and make sure developer is selected here. That'll get you into that. So what we're going to be doing, I have some code already written. We're not going to go over these. This code will allow you to set the PDF template. We can save the template. We can add a template, and we can load a template. That's all the code that allows us to do it. I've been over that before, not going to do that. So basically, also if we make a selection on it, we can load a template. So if I select it, it's going to load the template up here. That's going to run the macro to load it. And also if we make any change in the template in this code here, any change in the template there is going to save it down below. Okay, so that's all over here. So any change up here is going to save it into the table below. That's it. So that's all, but we're not going to focus on that. Let's focus on the really cool stuff of creating it. I've got a brand new module here called Filled Out Send PDFs, and this is the code we're going to write. So basically what I want to do is I want to send the information to Integromat. Integromat is going to then send, so what I want to do, let's go over it real quick. So what I want to do is I want to send all of this information, all of this, to Integromat. But I don't want to send, I want to send all the patients, but I only want to send a specific, right? If we're only focused on specific patient types like new patient, if I create and send it, I only want to do new patients. So how do we do that? Well, the best thing is to use a advanced filter, and I've set that up previously here. So we're going to set this criteria as type. So it's new patient, and this is going to equal templates and forms G3. So this criteria, if I want to run a filter based on only new patients, it's going to go G3. So it's connected directly to there. So that means when we run our advanced filter, we're going to use this as criteria S2 through S3. And then what we want to do is I want the results to come here. So then I've got all the results here, everything I need. We don't need the type, but we need everything. So what I want to do is I want to loop through all the results. I'm going to start on the third row and go to the last row. In this case, it's 4. So once I have on a specific customer, I want to take all this information. We just need to expand this, all of this information, and put it into variables and send it basically to Integromat. This is going to then take it, and I want to assign a specific name. So first name would be Samsonite, last name, interesting last name, Dunlap, age 45. So we want to set these specific variables too. So how do we do that? We're going to run a loop. So if we also know the columns, that's going to help us too. So this column is 21. We're going to run a loop from 3 to 4, or 3 to the last row. Then I'm going to run another loop from the first column all the way to the last column. In this case, it's 21 through 35. So we know it's going to run 2 different loops, 21 through 35. So how do we do that? Well, let's take a look. First, we're going to define some variables, and we'll create a sub. Let's just call this sub fill and email PDF. Now we have sub. We also going to be sending it through HTTP, so we need to create an object for that. So we're going to dimension obj HTTP as an object, right? Because I want to send it through an HTTP request. So we're going to post it. We're going to use a post HTTP, and basically you're going to take all that data and send it somewhere. So we're going to go over that. And then also I need a bunch of strings here. Not as many as you might think though, because we're going to create dynamic strings, so it's really cool. Dimension the message, right? We need the email message as a string. And also I need to know the subject, email subject. So the subject, we'll call it subject as a string. URL, that's the URL which we're going to actually be sending it there. So we need that also as a string. And also the JSON file. JSON is what we're going to actually be sending as a string. And notice that we had a webhook ID. Notice that I'll show you that in a moment, but that's got to be webhook ID because we can send several of them in this. It's really cool. We can set unlimited templates. Each template has its own webhook ID. So we need to define that also as a string. And then also something, we need to build up our hook string. I'm calling it the hook string. And basically that's going to contain all of the patient data. So we're going to call that hook string as a string. So we're going to combine the hook string and some other information. We're going to combine the hook string, we're going to combine the webhook, and we're going to combine it all into the URL. So it's all going to be combined. Okay, we also need some long variables because I need to loop through the customer rows. So we're going to mention the last customer row as long because I need to run an advanced filter. I need to know the last customer row. And then once we loop through those rows, the results we need to loop through. So we need to define the customer row as long because we're looping through it. Remember, that's not right. As long, okay? And then also I need to know the customer column. Remember, we're going to loop through the customer column as long. Also, we need the last results row. Remember, we're having an advanced filter. I need to know, in this case it was 4, but we need to know the last result row as long. Okay. And also that's pretty much it, right? It's pretty simple there. That's the only thing we need to know. So we've got the last customer row, the customer column, and the last results as long. So that's it for the dimensions. And then what we want to do is let's set the webhook ID. The first thing we want to do is set a webhook ID. Now where's that webhook ID? It's going to be located right here. We're going to have to generate that, and I'm going to show you exactly how to generate that. That's going to be located in E5. So that's the first thing we want to do. Let's bring this down a little bit so we can see a little bit of the screen. And so let's set that webhook ID, we've already defined that as a string, equal to sheet1.range E5. That's going to be our webhook. That's really important. I'm going to show you how to obtain that, of course. And we're going to call that the webhook ID. Okay, that's kind of self. And then also let's go ahead and set the object. Remember, we've defined it just as an object, but I need to set the OTOB object HTTP as a MS XML. So let's write that right now. Set the object HTTP equal to, and this is going to be called, we're going to create an object. This is late binding, create an object. And what is that object? It's called MS XML2.server XML HTTP. That's going to send us our request. So again, it's MS XML2.server XML HTTP. Okay, so that's going to actually create that. That's really important. Now we're going to focus mostly on sheet 2 with sheet 2 because that's where our data is located. That's in our patient data. So with sheet 2, what are we going to do? First thing we need to determine is the last customer row. So last customer row equals, what is it going to equal? That's auto hotkey that automated that. I covered that in a training a few weeks ago. Last customer equals dot range A. We're going to use A Excel. That's going to get us our last customer row. We need to run an advanced filter. We've run advanced filters many times before. Last customer row. Okay. And also now what we want to do is we want to create our advanced filter. So let's go back into sheet 2 here. We're going to create that advanced filter. We're going to use, again, we're going to use all the way from A through P columns. Criteria is going to be here, S2 through S3, and we're going to, results are going to go all the way from U2 all the way over to AI2. So let's write that up inside the code and write that advanced filter. Okay, so let's take a look here. We're already on sheet 2, dot range. We're going to start with the headers, of course, A2 all the way through P and the last customer and the last customer row. It's not value, it's advanced filter, dot advanced filter. And then what do we want to do? I want to copy that. Okay, copy that. And where do I want to? I want to use a criteria range. Criteria range colon equals dot range. What is the range? Again, not value. It's going to be S2 through S3. Always have to include the header when we do that. Okay, not value. Make sure it's not value. That's just automated. So the range is S2 through S3. That's going to cover our criteria. Next up, we're ready to copy to. Where do we want to copy to? Copy to range colon equals, again, dot range. What is the range? U2 through, let's take a look. What is the last column here? All the way AI. AI is the last column here. U2 through AI, right? And then not value, comma, unique, colon equals false. That's fine for this. Okay, so let's just take a look at that and make sure we got all the components right of that advanced filter. A2 with the headers must include the headers, and make sure always that when you're running an advanced filter that these headers must be exactly the same as one, your criteria must have the same header here typed, and also your results. Now your results don't need to contain all the data, but all the headers need to be exactly the same as your original data. Okay, and the results, so U2 all the way through AI2. That is where our results are going, U2 through AI2. Also all on sheet 2. Okay, now that we've run our advanced filter, this is going to run it. We just need to get the last result row of that filter. So how do we do that? We can do the last result row equal to, and I'm using auto hotkey for that, equals to, in this case it's not column A, but we're focused on column U. As long as it's a required U, that'll get us our last result row. Last, because we need to loop through those, last result row. Okay, so now we've got our last result row. Now we can be ready to run our loop for, let's call this customer row, we've already defined that as long, equals 3 to last result row. We should put a caveat in here just in case. What is that? If the last result row is less than 3, then exit sub, right? If there's no data, then we have to go out of exit sub, okay, just in case. All right, so now assuming that there is data for customer row equals last result, so always close our loop, next customer row, and write our code inside that. What are we going to do? The first thing I want to do is define the subject. We know what the subject's back on sheet 1, right? The subject of our email is going to be right here, located right here into E7 on sheet 1, and our message is going to be located in E9. So let's put those into variables now so we can move on from that. So the subject is equal to sheet 1 dot range E7 dot value, but I want to do something with that, right? I don't want to just have the subject, right? If the subject contains first name, I want to replace that with the first name. So right, I don't want the word first name in here. I want to replace that with the actual first name. The same thing with this should be first name, not F first. Okay, now that's great. So we got E7 and E9. All right, let's continue on with our code. So E7 is going to be our subject, but we want to do more than that. I want to replace actually the first name and the last name with the actual first name. So how do we do that? We're going to use replace. So replace twice. Actually, we're going to be adding a third one in a moment. Replace. What are we replacing here? I'm going to be replacing anywhere that it says first name, first, and put those in quotation marks, first name. Anywhere it says that, what am I going to replace it with? I'm replacing it with whatever is in here, whatever's here, you and the row, you and the selected row, the customer row. So let's do that right now. Let's write that in right now. So we're replacing it with anything that is in dot range, you and the customer row, dot value. So we're going to replace it anything. So that, but what else are we going to replace them? Hey, let's fix this. That's not spelled right. Okay, so replace. All right, so what else am I going to replace? I'm also going to replace last name. So let's put that in quotes. Last name and then the end brackets in quotation. I'm replacing that with the actual last name. Where's that located? That's located in V. So all we need to do is just copy this and change it to V here. Copy that and change it to V. Okay, perfect. So that's all I want. But there's one more actually I do want. Let's close that. Close the parentheses. Okay, check that and make sure we're good. And add the comment onto there. Okay, so that's it. But there's actually one more, not for subject, probably for, okay, so let's copy that and then also do the same thing for message, but make a small difference inside the message. So let's paste that here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to update the variable to message and add one additional feature. MESG message starts in E9, right? That's our original message here. Let's take a look at that. E9 is where our message is. But look, there's something that I want to do. If we're going to be sending this to Gmail, I want to make sure that the breaks, the line breaks in Gmail are similar to the line breaks here. But notice that we have different pages. So we have some, if it says first name, if there's a break here, I want to make sure that that break is also in Gmail. But Gmail uses HTML, Excel uses character code. So how do we change that from a character code to HTML? Well, we can do that with just a little bit of a replacement. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to add one more replacement here. Replace one more. And what am I, spell that right, replace. So I want to add one more replace. What am I going to replace? In this case, let's type message here. In this case, I'm replacing what's called character 10 equivalent. Character 10, that's the character code for a new line in Excel, but I want to replace that with something in Gmail, which is a BR, which is HTML. So in HTML, it uses BR standing for break. So let's replace that. So that means any time we put in a character code, that's going to change it to break. There we go. So now basically it's going to transfer automatically the line breaks from character 10 to break. So that's going to take care of for email. All right, good. So now we have that information. So now we've got to replace. Now we've got the first name. What else do we need to do? Well, I need to get those variables into a string and I need to send all that information in. So how do we do that? Well, let's go ahead. We can run another loop. There's another loop I want to run. Remember, we said we need to run from columns. Let's do that again. I shouldn't have erased that. Equals column. Okay, 21. That was 21 all the way. I need to run a loop from 21 all the way to 35. So let's write in that loop now because I need to pull all the information and get all that information and put that into our string. So how do we do that? We can run a loop. Let's go for, we've already defined the loop for customer column equals 21 to 35. And then close our loop, next customer column. So basically all I want to do is just really simple. I'm going to create a string, hook string equals also, but I want to keep adding and adding and adding to that hook string. So how do we keep adding it? Equals hook string and what is the value? Right, I want to add a few things. Using HTML, so the first thing I want to do is add the and sign in the string. So that's going to be the separator. And what do I want to do? I want to add the and again, dot cells. We're using dot cells because both the column and the row are dynamic in this case. But I want to add the header information. I want to add that header label. That's the first thing I want to do. So that is in row 2 and it is in column customer column. So that's going to add our header value. Well, what do I want to do after that? I want to add and the equal sign equals, and then I want to add again. Then I want to add the actual data. So the data is located in dot cells. This time customer row and then customer column dot value. So basically what that's going to do is build all that data inside this hook string. It's going to put the separator right before each header. Then it's going to say the header value is going to be equal to the data. So it's going to build that entire string. It's going to put all that data along with each header name into the string, and that's really what I want. That's all I have to do to build the string. So we got that covered. Okay, what do we want to do next? Well, next I want to build the URL string. I want to build that entire URL. So what is that? Because we need to send all that information. So the URL equals, and let's type this in. It's going to be, we're going to send it all to Integromat. So let's do that. HTTPS, and I'll show you how we built that. HTTPS : / hook, because that's where we're going to be sending it to, and I'll show you how we got this. Integromat, that's going to be integromat.com / parentheses, and what do I want next? And I want to put the webhook ID. We've defined that webhook ID because each hook is going to have a different ID. So we need to separate that that way we can send multiple templates, webhook ID. And what else? What else do we want to send? And then I want to put it in the question mark because that's going to separate our webhook ID from the data. So and the question mark, and then what do I want to do that? I also want to send the subject, and I want to do, so let's put that, and we can do it actually right here, question mark, and the subject is what? And then we're going to put in our variable equals, and the subject, that's the subject of the email. And what else do we want to do? And I want to put in the message. So we got to separate that. Remember, we want to separate that with the and sign, always separate. And the message is equal to, and of course our variable and the message. Okay, so that I want to send that subject, I want to send the message that we've created, and I want to make sure that each one of those has its own variable name here, the name here, and it's got to be equals and the actual message. What else do I want to send? And I want to send the actual hook string, which is all of the data. So let's type that in, and again, of course, the and sign. We need that separator inside our link here, and again, and the hook string. That's our variable that contains all of the data. Okay, good, that's it. So that's all we have. That builds our entire URL. So again, let's just go over that. We're going to send it here. What are we going to send? A specific, this is going to help for automation. I'll go over that with you shortly. The subject is our email subject, the name of it and the actual data, the name of the message and the actual data, and our hook string, which contains all of our data for our specific patient and the labels and the data itself. So now once we have that URL, what we're going to do is we're going to use the get statement with our object HTTP. Then I want to do is I want to open. What am I going to open? I'm going to open the get statement because I want to get something from it. And then the URL and then false. We're going to type in false. What do I want? The object HTTP again dot. In this case, we're going to set the request header. And what kind of header is that? That's going to be a content type. The content type is JSON dash type, and we have to set it comma separated. It's application /JSON. That's the type that we're going to be sending. That's very important. Content type, content dash type, application JSON. Okay, what next? Now we just need to send it. So again, object HTTP dot send. What are we going to send? JSON. That will send everything. So that's going to send the information. Send information. And then we'll do that for each customer row. So that's it. That's all the code we need to write. Everything else we're going to focus on inside Integromat. Okay, so basically, let's go over this real quick. We're creating the webhook ID. We're setting the object. The last customer row, we're going to run our advanced filter. We're looping through the results, all the customers that meet those results, defining the message, and then we're going to update that message actually with the variables, changing the first name, last name, and of course, getting the new line. We're building our hook string, which is going to contain all of our customer data and the header. And then we're going to build our URL and we're going to send that URL. Okay, good. So so the first thing we need to do is, the only thing is unknown, what is this webhook ID? We don't have a webhook ID. Notice in our template information, we don't have a webhook ID. Let's get that webhook ID. And we're going to use something called Integromat. Something I went over last week, we're going to go over it again. And that's called here, and I'm going to include those links. Remember, the links I'm going to include right here for you. Make sure you download that right in here, Integromat. That is going to allow us to build some really cool automations. So let's go over that. What do we want to do? Once you're in here, Integromat, here it is. Make sure you sign up for an account. It's free. Log in. Once you do that, once you sign in, give them your email address, then you'll come to this dashboard here, and you'll have, once you build out scenarios, you'll have some scenarios that look like this. I have a bunch of them. You'll have none of them, but we're going to build it right away. So the first thing you want to do is called create a new scenario. So we're going to create a new scenario. Now I want to use several different, there's tons and tons of different features that you can add. We're going to use 4 specific ones. The first thing we're going to use is a webhook. That's what we're going to be sending. So let's check that. That's what we're going to use in Excel to actually send the information. It's going to receive them. What do we want to do next? Next, we're going to use the Elido forms. That is the one, Elido here. That's going to generate our PDF. That's really cool. Then what I want to do is I want to send it also to Gmail and Dropbox. So Gmail, I want to click that, and I also want to use Dropbox. So let's use Dropbox because I want that PDF to come to us as well. So there we go. We now selected 4. So let's continue on. So the first thing we want to do, we've got the options. The first thing we want to do, we can click here, click here. We want to do is add a webhook. That's the first thing we want to do, and we're going to call it a custom webhook. Okay, so once we have this, let's give it a name. We're going to say we can call it anything we want. So let's just call it PDF generator. That's fine, and we can click save. Now once we do save it, notice that we're going to get this hook. Take a look at this. This is the same thing, HTTP hook integral map, same thing that we've programmed in our VBA. We have that already. We don't need that, but what we do need is this hook ID here. This one, you see that? Copy that all. That's what I want. I want this entire hook ID. Make sure you've copied it all. That's all I want. You can of course copy the entire hook and then parse it. Copy that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that right in here in our webhook ID. That's going to place it in the form here. So actually we got to place it here. This is our patient intake form, so I'm going to put the right form with the right, and then I'm going to delete it from the chief complaint form. Okay, so we have the right webhook ID. This is the webhook ID. That's going to help build us our link. Okay, so we have it here. Now what I want to do is we want to redetermine the data structure. Now basically what it's doing is we're going to run that macro, and it's going to look for data. So let's run the macro right now. And I'm going to run here. If there's any issues, it'll show. Add this in J. Oh, that should be a J. Okay, let's run it again. Okay, forgot the 2 here. Okay, so let's continue run it here. Okay, so it ran. Now what we're going to do is go back in your command. It says successfully determined, and that means all the information got sent here to this webhook. So let's click OK. We're good on that. Now what do I want to do? Now I want to send the information to Alito. So here's our data. Once we click here, it's already been connected, but for you, it's going to ask to connect. So you'll want to add a connection. So let's just call this Alito connection. Whatever you want to call it is fine. It doesn't matter here. And then what you want to do is you want to add in your API key here. API key. Where are you going to get that API? Go back into Alito, and you can see my API key because I'm going to clear it out after I do this training, so it doesn't matter here. So here's my API key. Inside the API, just copy that, go into back in the paste it in here, and click continue. And what that's going to do is going to connect Alito. Now what we want to do is select the template. These are templates that are already inside Alito. This is our patient intake form, so we're going to connect that. Now all we have to do is just simply add in the data. So we're going to click on address, and this is all the data that was pulled in from our webhook. Notice it's all here. Subject and message, that's going to be for our Gmail, so we don't need that right now. Now I'm going to do is I'm just going to find the address, and I'm going to drag it over here. And we're going to bring in the billing state here, and then the zip code. Just going to drag in all this data inside. That's going to fill out our form automatically. The email, which we're going to use also for the Gmail, so bring in that email here. The city is going to come here. The home number also, we've used that home. Even if the names don't have to be the same, there's no problem. And then the last name we have here, the last name, dragging in all this information here. And the ID number is going to be here. Date of birth we have here. So bring in all this, and then the age goes here. All right, great. So now we have first name also. Let's put that. Okay, so now we have all of that data in here, and just click OK. Now we have all the information inside Alito. Great. So now what do I want to do? Now that we have it, what do I want to do? Well, now I want to actually send it to 2 different places. I want to send it to the Gmail, and I want to send it to our Dropbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some flow control, and I'm going to put in something called the router. So let's add that in, and basically now I want it to go to 2 different places. So the first one is I want to put it inside Gmail, and we want to send an email. And also we're going to add this in a moment. Also I want to add in Dropbox. And what I want to do in Dropbox is I want to upload a file. So that's it. So now we're going to do both of those. All right, so let's focus on Gmail first. We can also zoom in and out. It's really cool. We can drag and move down. All right, Gmail. So the fortune for Gmail is we're going to add, I've already connected it, but I want to walk you through the adding. It's a few steps. So let's go ahead and add that in. So let's type in Google, let's type in Gmail connection. Okay, so now what we want to do is, what we need to do is we need to get the client ID and the client secret. So that's the only way to connect. Gmail is very secure. So the only way to do that is we have to authorize Google to connect. So how do we do that? How do we connect it? Let's go over that with you. How do we get the client secret? Well, the best way to do that is to go through something called Console Developers Google. And I'm going to include the links down here called Console Google Developers Google. So let's create that. I'm going to walk you step by step through the process of authorizing Google so that we can get that client secret and so we can get that. Let's go through the step by step. The first thing you want to do is log in to their Google Developer. Log in using the same email that you want to be sending those Gmail from. That's very important. If it's the first time that you've ever created a project, gone into this, you'll see the Create Project button here called Create Project. But if you don't have that, if you've created a project, you can find it through here, My Projects, and what we want to do is click New Projects. So either New Project is going to be here or it's going to be located here, either one. So the first thing you want to do is click on that and click on New Project. And then what we want to do is we want to give it a name. So we can give it any name. Let's just call it, any name is okay in this one. So we'll just call this Integromat, and then let's call it test. Okay, so then the location doesn't matter much, so let's call create. Click create, and that's going to create it. And the next step, once I want to do it, so I want to enable the Gmail API, and we click on the API services. So enable API services, so that's going to click here. Click there, and once you click there, we want to search for Gmail, because that's what we want to connect. We want to connect the Gmail API. So search in Gmail, and that'll find the Gmail API. Once we do that, what we want to do is we want to create the credentials. So we want to click enable, and so once we enable that, we're going to then go to the OAuth consent screen. OAuth. So let that enable here. Once it's done, it's going to take you to this screen called OAuth. So then what you want to do, then click create credentials. Once you're in this screen, we're going to go over to the OAuth consent screen here and let that load up. And then what you want to do is select external and then click create. That's going to put us through the OAuth consent screen. So the first thing we want to do is give it an application name. Let's just call it Integromat. And then what you want to do is go all the way down here and click add scope. Now once we add a scope, it's going to give us all this information of all the things that we want to allow Integromat to do. So the first thing what we want to do is google.gmail.com. That's going to allow us to allow Integromat to read, compose, and send your Gmail. Then what we want to do is click on the metadata. We want to allow it to metadata. We also want to allow it to insert information. So we're going to click on insert. That's going to allow us to insert mail in the mailbox. Also, let's try labels. We want labels to send and modify too. So we want to click send and also to modify, because that's going to allow it to create. So we want all those. Let's just go over those. We want to use compose, metadata, modify, Gmail send, google.com, this one's important, and insert. So once we have all those, we're going to click add. So that's going to give us all of this information to add. Then what we want to do is we want to add an authorized domain. So what is this authorized domain here? That's the one we want to add. We want to add integromat.com. So I'm going to paste it right in here, integromat.com. That's the authorized domain. And then we're going to click save to apply those changes. So that's going to save it. So once it's all saved, we're going to click credentials. Now I want to click credentials here. So once we're inside the credentials, I want to click create credentials. Create credentials here. And we're going to also click on OAuth client ID. That's going to give us the authorization here. So once we click that, we want to fill out just a very short form. So the first thing we want to do is we want the web application. We're going to focus on the web application, and we can give it a name here. And we'll just call it Integromat again. Okay, and next up, what do we want to do? I want to scroll down and look for authorized URIs. Authorized URIs here. So we're going to add them here. And we want to add one called integromat.com OAuth CB Google restricted. That's an important one. That's one important. Once we add that, we can click create. So that's going to create our authorization for one more step. So we're almost done. Now we've got our client ID and client secret. So now it's going to assign us. So now what we're going to do is we're going to copy this one. We're going to go back into our integration. We're going to paste it right in here. And then we're going to go back into our secret, and we're going to copy our secret, and we're going to paste it right in here. Once we have those, we can click continue. So you click continue, and you're going to see another screen, and you're going to select the account that you want the Gmail on. Make sure you select that account properly, and it's going to say this app isn't verified. That is that's the proper process. Click advanced and click the go to Increment unsafe. That's correct. And then it's going to say allow, then you give it allow, and then and then allow once again. And there we go. Now we have it. Now our Gmail is now connected. So if you followed all those steps, I'm going to include a link to help you with those in case you missed those steps. There's some really cool information, so I'll include. Okay, so now we're ready. Now our Gmail is connected. Now what we want to do is click map. That's going to help us too. Who do we want to send this to? Well, I'm going to send it using our email. So let's click on the email here. We want to send it to the customer. All right, and what subject? Well, we already have a subject created, so we can do that. We can also add more dynamic information here if we wanted to, and we already have a message, so let's put that in the message. What do we want to attach? Let's click add attachments. What do I want? I want to actually I want to put the Eldo generated form, but I actually want to map it. I want to create something specific. What kind of file name do I want? I want it I don't still want the name of the form, which is I want the name of the form specific to them. So let's map that name of the form. So first thing we're going to do is add last name, and then we're going to use underscore, and then first name, and watch out for these spaces. Notice it added a space, so let's remove that space. And let's just put the form name in. We can put any kind of a form name. We can put in, let's just say intake form, and then .pdf. Okay, so we want the .pdf because I want to make sure that file name contains that. That's the name, and the data is going to contain the data. So click add on that, and that's going to add that in here. Now we have all the information, intake form PDF. That's the attachment. We can add additional attachments. If you show advanced settings, it's going to show if you want to copy the receipt or blind copy. We can add more emails in that. That's pretty cool. And click OK. That's all we need to send to Gmail. What about Dropbox? Let's click on the Dropbox. What do we want? First of all, click add, and then you can create a new Dropbox location. Let's just call it Dropbox. Any name would be fine. And then what do I want to do? I want to click continue. And what that's going to do is going to connect your Dropbox account. So it's going to open up this pop-up. It'll connect it and just click allow. So once we allow it, okay, great. So now we've allowed it. So what do I want to put? First of all, where do I want to put it? I've created a folder in my public already. Inside my public, I've created a folder called filled out PDF. So that's it. That's where I want to put that filled out. Now, what do I want the name to be? I want to put the name to be the file name, but I don't want it, again, I want it dynamic. I want to know one for each patient. So we don't want just the file name. So let's remove that, and let's put in the last name again, underscore, and then make sure there's no spaces. Sometimes it adds these spaces. We don't need those. And then I want to put in the first name, but maybe I want to add in additional information like a date. What about the current date? Let's put in that also. We can do that here. Underscore, and I want to put in some dates, so we can find that right here under date. So we can even put in a date. Let's try format date. And what is the date that we want? Well, we can put in the word now. I want a now, and we can also format it, which is really cool. What kind of formats? Well, if we take a look here, we can see that we can put in all different kinds of formats. I don't really like using the periods, but I like underscores. So we can use an underscore for that. Something like we can do in DD underscore MM underscore YYYY. Okay, so that's gonna create a file name, a unique file name. And also what I want to do, if it already exists, I do want to overwrite it. So let's make sure we show advanced settings here. And I want to overwrite, just in case there's the same file name, we're going to overwrite. We have overwrite, and I'm going to put true. I want the overwrite, and I want to overwrite the existing file. Okay, so now we have overwrite. Now let's click OK, and that's going to create it. So the first thing I want to do is test this out. Let's see if there's any issues with it. So I'm going to click run once, and what it's going to do is going to wait for our webhook. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into our VBA, and I'm going to run this just like this. And actually I'm going to run it just for one row. So I'm going to go 3 to 3, right? I'm just going to temporarily, I'm not going to go to the last row because I only want it to run once. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this code here, and then I'm going to go back to integrate, and I'm going to keep an eye on it. 1, no issues there. Sent on Gmail and sent on Dropbox. So there's no errors there. Let's take a look at the results. Inside our Dropbox, let's open up our Dropbox folder, and we have the filled out PDF form, 7:45, that's the current time. Let's take a look at it. Notice it didn't get the extension, so we do need to add that. I need to get the extension. Let's take a look at that .pdf, and I'm going to add that automatically because we missed that. Okay, so make sure. So now once we have the extension, I'll add it onto the Dropbox, so no problem. Sometimes it's good to make. Notice we have a completely filled out form, obviously just the fields that we specified. Great, let's fix that small issue inside Dropbox where we need to add the extension onto that, right? Notice we have the date, but we do need to add .pdf to there. That's important, .pdf. Click OK. All right, let's take a look. We did that in Gmail. Let's take a look at my mail and see what I got. All right, and here's the email that we got. Notice we did remember to add the PDF on here. Hello, Samsonite. Thanks so much for contacting. We have the name, the clinic. Let's open up that PDF. Take a look at that. Again, it's all filled out with the information. Very cool. All right, that looks good. Just a few more steps and this training is going to be done. We have everything, the information's done. So close that out. We're good to go. So now we can take this, we can go to the last row, right? And we've already fixed the small issue with the PDF. We've put on the end of the PDF, so that's good. All right, so now what we're done, we know it's working correctly. Let's turn this on and activate it, and we're gonna save it. We wanna save everything, so we're gonna click the save. We're gonna write turn on. Now let's take a quick look, and we can run our code. Let's go ahead. Again, what we can do is copy this. Make sure you've copied that macro. Make sure we're gonna assign it to the button. That's gonna be assigned to the create and send button. Click assign macro, paste that in. Great. All right, one little update I want to make here. We want to clear out the hook string. After we've completed everything and after we've sent it, before we go to the next customer row, I do want to add one line of code. Hook string equals blank. Okay, now let's take a look now because we want to clear that out because all the data is going to be refreshed. So let's update that. I'll save the work. Now we can run the macro, create and send, and take a look inside our Dropbox folder. We now have two different meals, both independently, both data information. This one contains this information and this one contains this information, so that's in our Dropbox now. Cool, and let's just take a look at the email that I just got here and the two emails I got. Okay, let's take a look at these two. We got hi Russell. Okay, that's perfect. Joseph Russell intake form, perfect. And then we've got Samsonite Dunlap, that information also. So we've emailed, of course I emailed it to myself, all the information now has them. All right, great. I'm so glad I got to show this to you. That's how to fill out an email PDFs without using send keys, all with a few clicks and just a little bit of code. We wrote like 20 lines of code here. That's all we need to do. Of course, if you want to add in the forms, it's a little bit more code. I'm super glad I got to show this to you. Thanks so much. I'll include all the links. I'm going to include these forms inside the download. I'll include the fillable PDF form so that you can do it in a zip file along with this application. Everything for you in the links down in the description. I appreciate that. Don't forget to subscribe. And also, if you like, I've got 150 of my best applications on sale now for just $56. I'd appreciate it if you pick that up. That would help us out a lot. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.